everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good night to everybody who was tuning in, checking us out. JV Wins, Dogon SS once again, right back in your ear. Conscious Approach on YouTube. Major shouts out to everybody who's been joining us along for the ride, subscribing to the channel, leaving those comments, hitting that like button. Thank you very much. And as well for the people who have been checking out our content and you despise us and can't stand our content. We appreciate you too, whether you realize it or not. Today is April the 29th. Thanks for coming out tonight. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. We certainly appreciate that. Before we get things kicked off, I want to say, as always, check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. We are available in those areas for your audio fix. If you are not in position to check us out on YouTube, to check out the video. Also, we are now on TikTok. So you can also check out our video uploads and engage with our content on TikTok as well. Search for us there at Con Approach, CONAPPROACH, same spelling as the Instagram page. But yeah, man, just trying to be available any and every way possible. If this is your first time checking us out and you appreciate the content and the commentary, let us know. Leave a comment. Let us know where you think we went right or wrong. And if you are so inclined, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that like button so that we can let the YouTube algorithm know that we are producing the kind of content that people appreciate. And that's appreciate whether you agree or not. So just want to get a couple of those disclaimers out of the way before we go ahead and get things kicked off today. Got several interesting topics to talk about. I am anxious to hear what Dogon SS has to say about what we have on the docket. So let's go ahead and get right into it, man. First thing that we are going to discuss is the draft slide heard around the world with Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders, who at the conclusion of the 2024 college football season was a consensus top 5 pick and no worse than a second quarterback taken off the board, I believe, by most of these so-called experts who come up with all of these mock drafts and stuff. By the time the actual draft rolled around, the son of Deion Sanders did not get selected until the 5th round of the NFL draft, which is what, day 3, I think? I don't think he was picked until Sunday, I think. So there's 3 days of the draft that go by, and come day 3, I think they do rounds 4 and 5, I believe. And he was selected in the 5th round to the Cleveland Browns. And there's all sorts of theories on what happened. There's people hollering collusion. There's people, of course, they bring in race. There's people saying that there are forces at work that conspired to suppress his draft stock because of whatever reasons. And I guess we are going to give our opinions on that. A lot of talking heads in sports media are basically saying something nefarious took place here. And that is perhaps the only thing that can explain why someone as heralded as he could possibly have dropped that far down. So we'll provide a little color and context here before we get into how we feel about this. So this says Shedeur Sanders prank caller revealed as Falcons coordinator's son Jax Ulbrich. The mystery behind Shedeur Sanders' NFL draft prank call has finally been solved. On Sunday, the Atlanta Falcons confirmed that Jax Ulbrich, the 21-year-old son of Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich, was responsible for the call after he stumbled upon Sanders' draft phone number. So, of course, another thing that came out of the draft during this whole ordeal was there was a call placed to Shedeur Sanders' phone by someone who at the time was unknown, pretending to be a part of the New Orleans Saints and drafting Shedeur. Of course, it was later revealed that this was a prank. This is the individual who was behind that prank. He has since been publicly embarrassed and has issued a public apology to Shedeur. But this is yet another one of those things that came out of this whole draft fiasco. So this article goes on to read, the Falcons issued a statement acknowledging the situation and offering a formal apology to Sanders and his family. Alongside the team's apology, Jax Ulbrich posted a heartfelt public statement on Instagram expressing regret, both in a post and a story. On Friday night, I made a tremendous mistake. Shedeur, what I did was completely inexcusable, embarrassing, and shameful. I am deeply sorry for taking away from your moment. It was selfish and childish. The He added that he personally called Sanders to apologize and thanked him for accepting the call. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. The Falcons further clarified that Jax had discovered the number on an open iPad while visiting his parents. They emphasized that Jeff Ulbrich had no knowledge of either the leak or the prank until afterward. The Atlanta Falcons do not condone this behavior and have extended our sincere apologies to Shedeur Sanders and his family. The team's statement read, "We have been in direct contact with the Sanders family to offer support and facilitate an apology directly from Jax." So, of course, this link will be in the description of this video. That pretty much sums up every bit of context that we need to lay out before getting into this. So, yeah, Shedeur does not get drafted until the 5th round. Amidst all of that and the speculation as to the reasons why, he's pranked. So, there's just a circus surrounding this entire situation. But what are your thoughts on this whole draft situation, period? Um, Claims of collusion, all kinds of weird stuff going on. The fact that he slid and how much of an injustice it was. What are some of your thoughts with that?
Well, I think it's close to when we talked about the Kaepernick situation, where I basically said that GMs and these front offices, they don't want to deal with certain type of noise. At the end of the day, it's a job. You're not. There's no obligation to be in the NFL. The NFL don't need you. Just because you finish school and you're eligible for being drafted doesn't mean you have to be in the NFL. It is a job. So there's no right to play football. And the NFL treats their corporation like the job it is. And if you come into a job interview, because I heard all kinds of scallywags and some scutterbutt about the stuff that he was saying during his interview process, or either his demeanor or some of the answers he gave. Now, I heard all of this kerfuffle before the actual draft itself. So when the actual draft came and then he slid, from there I just put one and two together there, and I was just like, okay, well, this is Shedeur coming in there, not air quote humble enough, not looking for a job. He feels like he's entitled to a job in this league. And if you want to walk around acting like you're entitled to be on our roster, we don't have to pick you. And so with his demeanor, I feel as though it was more or less one of the things that nothing about his talent. I think it had everything to do with his demeanor and his approach to how he came about the whole interviewing process. So no, these teams don't have to draft you. You do not have to be in the NFL. I don't care how talented you are. At the end of the day, this is a job. And this ties into where homeboy from Captain America was talking about when he was talking to those guys on the pivot, and he was sitting there pointing to you guys. He was like, hey man, you guys were selected, more or less. And certain people get in positions because of them being selected. And it has nothing to do about talent. Somebody somewhere saw you and said, okay, yeah, you're better than that other guy that runs a 4-4, you know, and we're going to give you the opportunity for whatever reasons. So again, so when you're dealing with these corporations, these leagues, and these situations like this, people have to really understand that you are going in for a job, even though it's a really high paying one. It's a job. And if everybody knows how they'll kick you out at Target, Walgreens, or CVS, the NFL can do the same damn thing to you. And especially even with these large contracts, they'll cut bait with your ass. And then XY, air quote, collusion you or blackball you out the league. So they don't need you. And this was a prime example of the league exercising that muscle of saying, "Hey, bro, we don't need to do that." So for whatever reasons people want to, throw on top of that, I think that's the primary one, is that he came in guns blazing and not air quote humble enough. But what are your thoughts on Sir Shedeur slipping in the draft and or this guy over here setting up a whole prank? What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, the prank was just sort of adding gasoline to the fire, right? That was let me poo-poo even further on this guy's moment, which has already been poo-pooed pretty decently.
Yeah.
The draft itself, I think with Shedeur, there were a couple things that happened at the same time, and they all amount to what I would call a perfect storm.
Mhm.
I think you follow college football pretty closely. Um, there has been ever since Deion Sanders arrived at Colorado, there has been a very there has been a very strong media following. Him being there has been something that has been chronicled by mainstream sports media ever since he arrived. You have College Game Day was showing up there, all of the celebrities showing up there. You got the Fox show was there. It was a big deal when he got there. There was a lot of media fanfare around it. And I think Deion Sanders has cultivated an image for himself as a very likable person by the mainstream sports media. I think his journey from being on television as a commentator to
Mhm.
being at an HBCU to then graduating to the point where he's at Colorado. These are all aspects of a feel good story coupled with his general likability that caused the media to gravitate towards him. There is an ardent effort on the part of the media, in my opinion, to paint Dion in a very positive light because of the HBCU angle. We're living in post George Floyd America, so the whole HBCU angle and that whole aspect of it played tremendously in his favor. And then the fact that he is very much involved in his son's lives, and he has two of his sons on the team, one of them being the starting quarterback, and he brought them with him from an HBCU. So all of that sort of comes together to formulate what I perceive to be a perfect storm in favor of the coverage of Colorado and Deion Sanders, ancillarily, therefore, the coverage of Shedeur and all of the players that were at Colorado. So
Mhm.
you have that going on, his Q rating, his likability, that being Deion. And now, in my opinion, and I have no data to back this up, but in my opinion, I believe that extreme likability factor on the part of the media fed into certain talent evaluators' perception of the quarterback. And I feel like there was a tendency on the part of those talent evaluators to maybe paint the idea that he is like a prohibited top two quarterback taken off the board no matter what.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that that's true or not true. I'm saying that the motivation for that could have possibly been the whole likability factor. And the reason why you're setting yourself up for something potentially to happen such as this is if the expectations for him being drafted fall short of that, now you can sort of paint the scenario that something was going on because you believed initially that it was undeniable that he was a top two quarterback in his draft class. So if that doesn't happen, there then there therefore must be a reason as to why it didn't happen because you were so sure of the fact that that would happen. So I kind of feel like all of that stuff kind of you throw it into a pot and you have what amounts to there must be controversy if those projections didn't end up being true on the back end, which they weren't. And there's outcry now because he should have been taken earlier than he was projected to, but there's definite reasons as to why he didn't. And I think that ego, humility, quote unquote, plays a role in that. I certainly believe that to be true, but I also think that there's an outside chance that the talent evaluation in his regard may have been a bit skewed, influenced at least in small part by the extreme fanfare and likability for the program ever since Dion got there. To speak on the whole aspect of whether there are forces at work which created that outcome, I kind of agree with you when it comes to that. Like, people don't have to get on a Zoom or a phone call in order for there to be something that happens which would lead to an undesirable result. um, I don't care whether it's the NFL. I don't care whether it's a banking firm. I don't care. I don't care whether it's a car dealership. Like, I don't care what your place of employment is. Management and employers don't want to deal with what they perceive to be a potentially problematic, troublesome individual as an employee. Uh, Power structures just don't want to deal with it, and they don't want to take the risk of having to deal with it. And when they perceive your talent to not be great enough, juxtaposed to the risk that they would incur by bringing you in there, then you're going to slide, and they're not going to take you. Just like if you show up to the interview saying, how many vacation days do I got? There's a pretty decent chance that the hiring manager is going to consider other candidates before you. Because the one thing that you don't want to do as someone looking for a job is ask about all of the benefits and how much time off you get. You know, at least during the hiring process, you have to put on a front that you're 10 toes down and you're ready to dig into the dirt and work 24/7. That's what it means to be an employee, unfortunately. And even though they are high paid employees, professional athletes and NFL players are nevertheless employees. They are. And there is a tendency on the part of the media and fans alike to, due to how much money they make and how much fame and notoriety they receive as a result of their careers, perceive them to be someone who exists outside of the parameters of typical employment. And in most ways, they don't exist outside those parameters. If I am a job candidate on the streets trying to get a job somewhere and I'm interviewing, the last thing that I am going to do during that interview process is ask about benefits and how often I get a pay raise and and how often I can expect a bonus and how many vacation days I accrue and when's the first chance that I can get to take a break. People just don't want to hear that when they're hiring people. And I think for a lot of folks with this hugabaloo, to add to the words that you was throwing out there, for a lot of people in these positions of power with this hugabaloo about how he was conducting himself during the pre-draft process, the interviews, not performing at the combine, and all of this other stuff. There was a lot of that kind of sentiment. There was a lot of the equivalent of an NFL player showing up to a job interview and asking about benefits and time off and 401k instead of making it clear I'm here to work 24/7. And that's what employers want to hear. I'm ready to work 24/7. Now, that is not to excuse or come to the NFL's defense per se. That is the nature, the reality of employment in fair market capitalistic society. And if you don't want to comply with that, you are going to have to seek other alternatives. But if you are going to willingly enter into this infrastructure, you are going to have to conform to these standards. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, fair or unfair, but no one is above this unless they're running their own ship. And even though these guys are millionaires, they don't run or own their own anything. They are employed by these various franchises. So I think that a lot of that was kind of going on at the same time, and it worked to his detriment. You know, you can't show up to the job interview asking about breaks and vacation time and 401k. You got to ease your way into that. Maybe once you get past that 90-day grace period, what do they call it? The 90 days. What's that word?
Probation.
Probation. Yeah, there you go. Once once you get past that 90-day probationary period and they can't fire you without write-ups and just cause, maybe then at that point you can start inquiring about how much I can sit back and chill and take a load off. But you're not going to show up at the onset talking about what you deserve, what you're entitled to, what you're demanding, and who you are, and that should be enough for you because it's a privilege for you to bring me into your building. So I think that there was a coalescence of multiple factors going on at the same time, and at that point, there is indeed a conspiracy because, in the truest sense of the word, there's multiple factors environmentally which are conspiring together to work against you. And that's what I think happened to him. So, you know, we can get into all of this other stuff, collusionary stuff or whatever. But at the end of the day, employees are whom they are. And the power structure and employers and management and presidents and CEOs also are what they are. If you are going to, enter into that infrastructure and ask for them to pay you handsomely, you are going to have to do it on their terms because they run it and you don't.
Yeah, man. And if there is, if there is any type of collusion, it's a collusion. It's a collusion in thought, in a situation of they all these owners think the same way.
Correct.
So they didn't even have to have conversations. You know what? We're gonna let them slide 5 rounds. It's like, no, they all think the same.
Exactly. That's why I said, they don't have to get on a Zoom call
Mm-hmm.
to discuss this.
Mm-hmm.
They harbor the same mentality.
Right.
So it's almost like a brain trust,
Mm-hmm.
where it's a hive mentality. They're all going to internalize that information similarly. So there doesn't have to be all outright collusion. The result is going to be what the result is going to be.
Yeah, man. And I've heard all kinds of questions that come from this draft process. They ask some stuff that the players go, on some DJ Vlad stuff, like, how do you know that? Who told you that? I was watching clips of Delaney Walker. He used to play for San Francisco and the Titans. And he said during the draft process, man, they said, are you a part of a gang? And then because they saw the tattoo on his neck or something. It had some, and he was like, oh, no, he knows people that are in the gang. It was like, okay, well, they're just making sure, And so when these I think Lamar Odom too, I think he also mentioned something like during his process, they had asked him some off the wall stuff like, hey man, how y'all know that about me, kind of thing. And I say that to say that when Shedeur's coming in there, and as you mentioned, he's a social media sensation. All right, everybody knows his name at this point. His YouTube channel, they're vlogging their football experience. All right, millions of views, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, followers, and all of that good stuff. So this guy, he comes in with a lights, camera, action going on. All right, I'm pretty sure he was in there with his bust down AP on his wrist. Okay, so it's just like, hey man, I make more money than everybody in this room anyway, kind of attitude, and they don't want to see that, and so I'm pretty sure while they were sitting there asking him their questions or whatever, he was probably being dismissive in a situation of, hey, look, man, I come from millions, I made my own millions, I know I'm good enough to be in this league. I know I'm good enough to start in this league. I'm already on my way to millions. If you don't like me because of who I am and what I'm associated with, all that energy. And so with all of that energy coming in with these people that are already looking sideways, it can go sideways. And so if there is a collusion going on, I hear Stephen A. Smith saying things, all this stuff.
It was the usual suspects, yeah. The usual suspects went collusion and race. Stephen A. Smith, Ryan Clark. It's the typical people who are going to take it there.
Yeah, man. But if it is collusion and all that other good stuff, all right, it's because you're dealing with owners, so they're going to be that way. They've always been that way. The NFL is trying to maintain its stronghold on the people in the field, literally and figuratively. So if anybody comes in there acting like they're bigger than the program, we're going to show you who's really on top. And so I think that's what we pretty much witnessed there. But I hope he gets a fair shake while he's out there. I hate that Dillon Gabriel. People hate on Dillon Gabriel. I like Dillon Gabriel, but I hate that they're on the same roster, that they have to compete against each other. But I'm wishing the best for Shedeur. I was pretty much 50-50 on a guy. Hell of a college quarterback, but he played in the air raid system, so I don't know how that translates to actual what goes on Sundays when you don't have good protection like he didn't have at Colorado. Will you be able to get up from that hit? It's a lot going on with Shedeur, but I do feel as though that he would have went sooner had none of the stuff that we already spoke on. So best of luck to that guy, man. Wish him the best.
Yeah, I don't know how he's going to pan out either. and I'm not a talent evaluator, so I don't know how accurate his pre-draft projections were compared to what ended up happening to him. I'm
Mhm.
fairly certain he wasn't a fifth round caliber talent, but I also don't know whether he was a first or second round caliber talent either. I'm not sure.
I gave him second round
You
for
gave me
sure.
okay, yeah. I honestly don't know because of all of that stuff that you just mentioned about the offense and who he played against. That
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not sure exactly how it translates. I do believe, however, that there is an extreme likability factor surrounding Deion Sanders specifically. There's a lot of media fanfare. And I do know that a lot of these talent evaluators and these draft experts are human at the end of the day. And they are going to gravitate towards what they like and what makes them feel good and what they believe is a great feel good story. And I think that Shedeur's top two quarterback on the board pre-draft projection may have been a result of that. I'm just throwing that out there. And then, the last thing that I'll say is, with respect to, power structures, yeah, the NFL is a cabal. We talk about this all the time. Power structures are not in the business of seeding power. They are in the business of making more money and gaining more power. They are not in the business of seeding power. So this notion of collusion, you're 100% correct. These individuals do not physically have to meet in some room to say, let's make sure we suppress his draft stock. Like,
Correct.
all people in positions of ownership in business think the same when it comes to labor. And if they perceive someone to be troublesome as labor, they are going to internalize that stimuli the same way, which is we are going to take some of the air out of his momentum and render him more humble than he otherwise would be so that he can be the type of employee from a character standpoint who can get down or lay down. And I don't think that that's a race issue. I think that that's a labor versus management issue. Now, oftentimes it just so happens that labor and management falls along racial lines, but that's the rest of the world. That's in every area of business and industry. That's what you're going to see. But I think that that's optically the way it looks. I think in terms of practice, I don't really look at that as anything other than that's a management and labor issue. If you want now, here's what I will say, and you mentioned this before. I forget the subject that we were talking about, but we were talking about college football, and you made a very good point, which I agree with, which is if if you really want to deflate the balloon in terms of the power that like the power fives and the traditional conferences have in college football, then there needs to be a shifting in the direction of the talent. And all of the marquee big time black players should just stop going to power fives and all attend HBCUs. And I agree with that because that would fundamentally shift the power dynamics in college football. And it would move things away from these power fives and how much leverage they have because they always get the best players. But no one is willing to take it there because despite how much talk there is about how uneven and unjust college football can be from time to time, people nevertheless still want to be a part of the Power Five apparatus because you enjoy the resources, you enjoy the benefits, you enjoy the notoriety, you enjoy the money, you enjoy being a beneficiary of all of that. And they're the ones who are most equipped to offer it. So you ain't gonna go nowhere, despite how much you complain about it. And I view the NFL the same way. Like if you really want to create an environment in which a cabal such as the NFL has to consider ceding some of its power, then Shedeur should just go to the CFL. Like, start going to the CFL, start doing XFL, like, take the talent elsewhere. Not because those leagues are inherently better, but because if you take the talent elsewhere, the NFL is going to have to consider various ways to get the talent back into the door, even if that means ceding some of its power in the process. But no one's willing to do that because the NFL is the show, right? The NFL is the end all to be all. It's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest stage. It's where you can get the biggest contract. It's where you can get the most endorsements. It's where you get the most notoriety. It's the biggest stage. So even though there's constant complaint over the inherent inequities in the NFL, no one's going to take those necessary measures. You're still going to go anyway. And as long as you're still going to go anyway, they will still retain all the leverage in the world. And when they have that leverage, they can do stuff like this, free of any perceived consequences. They'll create an environment without getting on a single meeting, plummeting your draft stock. And there's nothing that you can do about it because you're going to go anyway. So I say good luck to Shedeur, but it's a cautionary. This is yet another example. It's an exemplification of the power struggle between labor and ownership, and how at the end of the day, ownership is going to retain as much of its leverage as possible. It's never going to cede its power. And like you, I agree. Labor always internalizes troublesome. I mean, management always internalizes troublesome labor as just that, troublesome. And whenever they perceive you to be troublesome labor, they are either going to figure out ways to make you less troublesome, or they are going to just not deal with you entirely.
Yeah, man. So I agree. So if people want to just, if you're gonna show up at this person's house and ask them to come inside, if if they just say, take your shoes off, take your hat off, just take your shoes off and take your hat off, man. You wanted to go in there because you know how much money in there, how much this and that. You wanted to go in there, so just do that. Fight the good fight another way. Fight the good fight, of I'm being me, or up and down, no matter where I go. I ain't gonna never switch up who I am, And then it's like, hey, man, but you're going into a situation. You're going to a place where they're requiring this. So, yeah, man, this was just a valuable lesson, I would say, for Sir Shedeur. I don't think this is going to make him fly low. I think he's going to continue to be him. But, yeah, man, you never want to tell nobody because it's not selling out. It's not doing any of those weird things. This is a weird dynamic we got going on in the United States, man. And you need some income around here. And you don't have to acquiesce to these things. You can do your own thing. That's fine. But that's fighting the good fight another way. But in the meantime, if you need capital to get that, whatever you need to do later on your fighting the good fight thing later, that's fine. Just take your shoes off, take your hat off when you come into these people. Now, everybody got a line. I got a line. Certain jobs wanted me to cut my hair. I wasn't going to do that. So I just left, Certain other jobs wanted me to do X, Y, and Z. I was like, well, I'm not doing that either. I'm no cornball. But if another job came, but if a job was being reasonable, about whatever the hell, tucking my shirt in or whatever, even though I may feel some type of way about it, I did what I had to do to get the paycheck, to fight the good fight another way. So if the only thing you got to do is during the draft process or the interview process or whatever is anybody say yes sir, no sir, that weird stuff, man. You ain't got to do all that. It's just like, hey, man, just understand what's going on. Peep the room, understand, gather the temperature of the room, and then treat yourself accordingly, man. But if you just come in there guns blazing, I am who I am, deal with it, and you're asking them for favors after that, most likely you're not going to get what you want. So I think all of this situation, man, is an interesting dynamic. But I agree with you, bro. I think it's a lot more swirling around this situation. It's a concert of things more than just one direct, whatever,
Yeah. I wish him the best of luck. He definitely has a good pedigree. He comes from a good pedigree. Yeah. He definitely comes from a good pedigree. So I wish the best for him. But yeah, this to me is a labor management dynamic, and 9 times out of 10, labor just doesn't. Labor just doesn't have the leverage. I don't care how many collective bargaining agreements get used or conjured up to try and give more power to labor. At the end of the day, labor is still labor. and the players are labor, and management and ownership are management and ownership. And if you want some of that power dynamic to be, moved around, I would say take the talent elsewhere. Who's going to have the guts to make that move and sacrifice millions in the process? Who knows? But thus far, we haven't had someone step up to the plate to do that yet. There isn't a single lottery pick or first round pick who says, you know what, I don't like the way the NFL does business. I'm taking my talents to the CFL. All of this complaining, they still go to the league anyway. So at the end of the day, what do you really have to complain about? You're going to comply with all of their demands. So
Cold world,
man. It really is, man.
Hey, look, good luck, Ferrari, bro.
Yeah, the good news for him is, yeah, he's already a millionaire, so he doesn't need the money necessarily. So yeah, if he does determine that he wants to fight the good fight another way, he's not going to have to rely on someone else's check in order to do that. He's already got his own checks, so at least he's in that position. But otherwise, bro, as cool as you are and as many social media followers as you have, sir, you are still an employee in the NFL. You're still labor. Yeah. Shouts out to Marcus Dudley as always on the chat, bro. Shouts out to Fat Even also on the track. Fat Even says Shedeur Sanders needs to sue the NFL. Yeah, good luck with that. And shouts out to AVJ also on the chat, man. Shouts out to y'all. Appreciate it.